Good Wednesday, everyone. It is the 19th of January. I hope that your January is off to a good start. Like I said last week, I feel like I'm already in the middle of March, but I'm trying to get grounded in reality. So, welcome. As always, if you would be so kind as to let me know that you're here in the comments. That's always helpful. And I do want to say, like, with this particular topic today, I haven't really talked about this kind of stuff in a Facebook Live. So I'm kind of excited about that. And I just want to encourage you, if you have a particular question, because we're going to be talking about copy. If you have a particular question, to please feel free to pose it to me in the thread, and I will come and visit the thread now and again to see if you have any questions and how I can answer them. So I'm just gonna check to see if people are here. Anybody? Yvonne, oh, you're so faithful. I'm really impressed that you're here all the time, truly, and I'm very grateful. Hi, Christy. Good morning. Nice to have you here. All right, let's get started on this. So a few people, as you know, I don't make these topics up out of thin air. I actually ask you for input on what you want to hear in these lives, and so this is kind of an amalgamation of a few questions about copy. So I thought that I would just answer them kind of all together under the heading, right, of talking about copy. So let me tell you the questions that I received, and then we can connect the dots. So, getting your bearings with copy when you get a piece of copy in your inbox and you see it, and you kind of have to get oriented to what the copy is asking of you. So, how do you do that? How do you get your bearings with a particular piece of copy? How do you sound natural? Because it's still the thing. It's ever the thing to sound real, like a real person, right? How do you sound natural saying things you would never say in real life? This is the great conundrum of being a voice actor, and the fact that our work is so much of our work is done by way of the words of advertisers, right? There's lots of voiceover work that isn't advertising, but so much is commercial work. That's the definition, right? So, and they often write things that aren't the least bit natural sounding. So it's a little bit insane what they ask of us, but nonetheless, that's our job to figure out how to make it sound natural and not pushy and not selly, as they've written it. Connecting with the copy, right? Which is part and parcel of these other things. And then standing out in a sea of talent, which is the perennial question. We're always concerned about the fact that we're that there are a lot of talent out there, and that how do we stand out in it in order to book, because that's our goal, right? To book, to and to ultimately, make a living doing this, right? So the question is completely understandable and pertinent, And so what I'm going to say to you about that, how you stand out in a sea of talent, is something that you hear from me all the time, which is simple but not easy, right? Simple but not easy. So let me just address that one first. In order to stand out in a sea of talent, you have to be yourself. Because again, there's nobody like you. There's nobody like you. And what that requires from you is that you let go. That you let go of all your preconceived notions, which you came by honestly, because this is what it's like to do voiceover in the world of advertising, watching television, seeing everything, seeing commercials, hearing commercials. It's a very strong message we get about what commercials are supposed to sound like. My dog is a little disgruntled with me, so bear with. She might give me some attitude. Um, so it's kind of an ingrained battle that we fight about, letting go and being ourselves. And I will tell you, this is the one reason, it's a huge reason why I think it's so important to come to one-on-one voiceover coaching later. You need group classes. You need workshops, right? Where you can hear what other people are doing, reading the same copy that you are, to discover that even if you interpret the copy the same way, you will never sound like that person that you've just heard, or those three people who are reading the same copy as you. You just won't. Even if all three of you get all the same copy points, right? And you understand the copy and you communicate its meaning really well, you're just not going to sound like the other person. It's impossible. It's a virtual impossibility. And so I fought this battle for a long time. I thought for the first 15, 20 years of my career that I had a really generic sound, and it wasn't all that distinctive. I flipped the meaning of that. I didn't berate myself for that. I thought, well, that's probably why I book, because nobody really recognizes my voice attached to a particular campaign. So I read a lot of different things. There were people in the late 80s and 90s when I was coming up who had such a distinct sound that they defined the genre for a while. But they don't work anymore, because their voice was so distinctive that it was attached to a particular campaign and they could never shake it, right? It was sort of one note, right? So, there's a good side and a bad side to sounding really distinct, right? But what I realized later is that I sound like me. That's what I sound like. And this whole notion of like, is it distinct? Well, it's distinct by virtue of the fact that it comes out of my particular mouth, right? So there are people who, I sound like, and they sound like me. My mother used to always call me and say, "Is that you on the Ambien commercials?" I'd be like, "No, Mom, it's not me." Well, it was somebody who sounded an awful lot like me, but you can't help those things. We all have, kind of doppelgangers and stuff like that in the world, but for the most part, like, we're individuals. So you can't help but have an individual sound coming out of your mouth, right? So how do you stand out in a sea of talent? By letting go of your preconceived notions of what commercials are supposed to sound like, what you're supposed to sound like, and, which leads me to the next, and connect to the copy, right? Connect to the copy. So how do we connect to the copy? Well, first we have to ask a few questions, right? About what's in front of me. Well, let's take commercials. I really want to use commercials as an example, but it does apply to narration as well, explainer videos. It applies, right? It applies more acutely to animation and video games because you're actually playing a character, So, where's my dog? Oh, there she is. Okay, we're all good. But let's talk about it as it relates to commercials. We got to ask ourselves some questions. When we first see that piece of copy in our inbox, we have to identify it. Is it radio? Is it TV? If it's TV, what kind of TV is it? Is there a product mentioned? Is there a problem presented and a product mentioned? Is there a price? Is there a sale date, like come in by Labor Day, that kind of thing? By the end of January, what have you, right? So we have to identify what kind of spot it is, right? Because a radio spot sounds different than a TV spot. A TV spot that has product mentioned sounds different than a brand imaging TV spot. They all have different requirements. They're very subtle, but they're meaningful. So the first thing we want to do is identify what it is. Then the next question, and this is where acting comes in, the next question that you want to ask yourself is, who am I talking to? Who am I talking to, right? You will hear in a lot of of commercial workshops about how you might, in order to sound more natural, you need a lead in line. Like, give yourself a lead in line. What did you say just before you spoke the words written in the copy, right? And this is supposed to make it sound more natural. This is supposed to make it sound more connected. And I would beg to differ. So I think an approach like that actually makes you more self-conscious. You're more concerned about what you are saying, right? Like what you are thinking and what you are saying than you should be, because we always speak to someone. And when we speak, we are in relationship with someone. So I think perhaps a better, more effective approach to that is to imagine who you're speaking to. What did they say to you that prompts you to speak? Because we don't speak in a vacuum unless you live alone and you walk around talking to yourself all day like I do. But we generally don't speak in a vacuum, right? We're talking to someone. And in the case of commercials, all of the scenarios that are set up in commercials, right? Whether you're an announcer, whether you're a real person announcer, whether you're in a dialogue spot, we are in relationship and we are talking to people. We are talking with people. And in everything, I'll exclude brand imaging from this because it's different, but in all of that, a problem is presented, and generally we, the voiceover, have the answer to the problem. That's what we're doing. We're answering the problem. So just as an example, let's say it's an AT&T spot that's about to tell me all the wonderful features if you sign up for AT&T, right? So I imagine I'm talking to my girlfriend, right? And I imagine that my girlfriend just said to me, "Oh my God, I hate my phone service. It's so spotty. I can't stand it. I can never get a call through. It's ridiculous. I don't know what I'm going to do." And I respond to that by saying, "Did you know that AT&T has a special right now through the end of January? They have the best 5G all over the country. And if you sign up by the end of January, you can add 3 people into your family for no money, and you'll also get a free iPhone." I just answered her question, right? You have a problem with Verizon? Let me tell you about AT&T. It's rooted in conversation and it's rooted in problem solving. That's what we're doing. So we want to do all the things that take our attention and our focus off of ourselves and put it onto the other person, right? That we've imagined, right? So that we're problem solving. We're not thinking about how pretty our voice is or whether or not we hit a particular word hard enough, right? We're solving the problem. And then all of that stuff will come naturally. Let me tell you about AT&T, because right now they have a special going on. If you get everything by the end of January, you'll get a free iPhone and you can add 3 people to your account for no more money per month, right? Like I wasn't thinking about all the things I was supposed to hit. I was just solving the problem, right? So I hope that makes sense. Now to add on to that, not only who are you talking to, but where are you? Are you in a little cafe somewhere where it's super quiet, right? And you're having this super intimate conversation and your friend is like leaning into you and going, "Oh my God, I'm having so much trouble with Verizon. My phone service is awful where I live. I'm not exactly sure what to do about it. I'm almost to the end of my plan." And then I say with my copy, right? "Did you hear about AT&T? Because right now they're offering a special through the end of January. And if you sign up, you get a free iPhone and you can add 3 people to the plan for no more money per month." So that changed, right? It's more intimate. I'm speaking to someone directly still. I'm still solving their problem. But the surroundings have changed. So let me add another layer to that and say, what if it's a funny AT&T spot, right? Perhaps it's funny. And the scenario is that you and your friend are climbing K2, right? And you're out and it's like you're up 50 billion feet climbing ice picks, right? You're like away from each other. It's very dangerous. And your friend is like, says to you, I wish my service worked out here. Verizon sucks in this area. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, right? And then I respond by saying, have you heard about AT&T? They have a spec, blah, 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 blah. All that changed was the scenario, which I imagined. It's still my friend that I'm talking to. It's still a problem that I'm solving, but the scenario changed. And so I changed with it, right? According to what I've imagined. Now, this would have to be in the copy. It would be like, this is a funny spot. These guys are climbing a mountain, you know, it should sound like you're out on a mountain, right? But that's what you do, right? Does that make sense? I'm hoping that all of this makes sense. I'm going to check in here before I move on to the next thing. So, Erica! Hey, Amber. Nice to see you. Fantastic. Okay, so no questions as of yet. That's good. But these are just really simple questions that you ask, right? What kind of spot is it? Right? What does it require of me? And I'll tell you just basically that radio is always gonna require more of you in terms of presence and projection and all of that, because you, the voice actor in a radio spot, are the primary purveyor of information, right? In TV spots, it's not the same. Often, well, generally speaking, a TV spot, the picture is what conveys the basic message. We know this because we can turn the sound down and we can still get the general gist of the commercial. Right? So, oh, did I just lose my train of thought? So there's a distinction, right? Are we hitting copy points harder, right? We are going to do that in radio more so than we're going to do in television. There's a distinction. And then in television, you move to even more like more of a subtle, quiet, more close-up read on the microphone when you get into brand imaging, and that's a whole workshop I'm teaching this weekend, which I still have audit spaces. So if anybody's interested in really getting inside of this, you know, let me know and I'll send you the link again. Then what's the other thing? Okay, how do you sound natural saying things that you would never say in real life? This is the age-old question, right, of voice actors who are always seeking reality, right, sounding real, sounding natural, versus advertisers who are trying to sell stuff. And we don't sell things to our friends. We don't talk like that. We don't sell things to our families, right? So when they say, you know, read it like you're talking to a friend. Come here, Stella. Come here. Read it like you're talking to a friend. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to sell a car to my friend. so therein lies the conundrum, right? So sometimes the language is just not friendly and conducive to sounding natural, and that's something we just have to let roll off our back like water off a duck. It's not going to sound like we all wish it could sound, right? As the actors that we are, But one of the things that I do if I'm really stuck on this and it's something that just doesn't sound natural to me, I rewrite the copy for my own use, not for what I'm going to send, but I paraphrase it. I will paraphrase the copy for myself to try to find that place that sounds more natural, right? So that's a bit of a trick, right? The other two things I do is I will use a little bit of upspeak, right? Because that sounds less professional. I don't mean that as a slander, but it just does, right? And then the other thing I do is that I sloppy up my diction. So let me give you an example of that, okay? So here's let's say it's a dialogue between me and my husband. And the line is, sweetheart, it's written, I am going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? I am going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? Now, we don't speak so perfectly like that, right? But as voice actors, if we read that verbatim, we are going to say, I am going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? Or does that sound, that sounds like, what? That sounds like a Stepford wife, right? Like that doesn't sound real. It does, that's not how I would speak to any member of my family. Here's what I would say instead. Here's how I would say it instead. I'm going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? So let me slow that down. I'm going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? Versus, I am going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? See the difference? One sounds like kind of a real person, and the other one sounds a little bit like Siri, which is what we don't want, unless they're like, this guy is married to Siri, and then we want Siri. Now here's how I might add upspeak, right? I'm going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? So see the difference? I'm going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? I'm going to go to the store, sweetheart. Is there anything I can get you? Like, what sounds more natural, right? I think the one with a little upspeak and the one where I'm just kind of sloppy with my diction. I'm not so perfect. Like, we have to stop thinking about having perfect voices that that pronounce everything perfectly. Now, that may be different in a medical narration where everything needs to be pristine, right? And in maybe a documentary where, like, we are sharing the story and we are professional and we are the expert, right? That's the role we're taking on. And we're very, in those settings where you're doing e-learning, right? Even in documentaries and stuff like that, the role that we are playing, we are teacher. So we're not voice actor, we're teacher. We are imparting information as a teacher would to a student. And so that does require that we speak more clearly, right? And that we really get our message across, right? This is obviously not comprehensive, right? These are just some tips to get you moving, right? Sometimes we see something in our inbox and we're just stuck, right? So these are just little things that you can do to get yourself started, right? Hit record and get started, even asking yourself those questions. Who am I talking to? What did they just say to me to elicit this response from me, right? Those are not complex questions. It doesn't have to be perfect in your head. It just has to make sense to you, right? And make sense to the copy, right? It has to fall in line there. So, and then, I'll close it off by saying, in none of that was there ever a consideration of how I was going to stand out in my audition. I think that the way we stand out in an audition is to be faithful to the copy, to communicate its meaning, right? And to ask ourselves those questions. Who am I talking to? What did they say to me to elicit this response from me, right? And where am I talking to them? Inside a cafe? At a theater before curtain goes up? I love this, like, don't wake the baby, right? Like, did you know that, right? Like those kinds of things. Like, there are a million places that you can be, to talk to somebody, including, on a mountain climb. So let go this idea that you have to do something. You have to do something unique in order to be unique. You already are unique, and so pay attention to the copy points. Ask yourself those questions, and I think that may help you get oriented. Okay, let me just check to see if there are any questions or anything like that. Hey Shauna. Hi Susan, nice to see you. Anybody before I close things out? I just want to make sure if you have questions that I answer them. And if you have questions later, obviously post them here, or find me anywhere you can. You can find me on direct message, like in Facebook or Instagram. I'm not so much on Twitter, but those two apps I'm fairly present. And and feel free just to ask anything in this group. And if there is something that you want me to talk about, just post it. Post it on the feed. It doesn't have to be, a comment on something. It can just be your own post. Like, feel free. I really want to help you, and I want to answer whatever questions you might have. So I'm going to leave it there. I've spoken too long again. Next week, I'm going to start at 9:30. Starting next week, that's going to be the starting time. 9:30 a.m. Pacific. I had to juggle my schedule a little bit. So anyway, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week and a great remainder of the day. And I'm here if you need me. All right, everybody, take care. Talk to you soon.